All right. I think we're live now. We got a game just for you, Caleb. See, I was waiting for you, man. I created a game just for you. And then I was like, well, dang, he's not going to be here. But he is. So you got to be out here by 3:45. If we're not done, which we should, 4:45. Yeah, if we're not done, just message me that you're out, and we'll just continue the show as if nothing was going.
I mean, I like how you started the show as if I wasn't here. That's fine.
All right. Hold on a second. Is everybody ready? You guys good to go?
Good to go.
Good.
Like we actually prepare for this.
No, I know better. I do this mostly for me. I do it for myself. All right, here we go. Well, look at here. We got a screenshot waiting to happen with all the gang here. Captain Dean Thomas is across from me. Captain Scott Null is across from me. Captain Caleb McCumber. We got three captains right here. And the conductor, who I got to be on top of my game today because we got some wild stuff happening today. On the Bite Me podcast, I am John Lopez. This is the Bite Me podcast. We got you covered, man. We got all kinds of topics happening. Always try to keep them timely. Always try to keep them appropriate for the season in which we are fishing or not fishing, but of course, we've all got our roles, and I'm pretty much just going to kind of direct traffic here. But I got to start with the question that everybody wants to know. It's not necessarily fishing related unless it keeps you off the water. Caleb.
I thought you were going to say that we kept the show appropriate for families or something, and that's why I started laughing.
Well, not always. Not
you threw
always.
That appropriate word around pretty strong.
Have you learned how to cook chicken?
Yeah, I tell you, it takes a man to order his chicken medium rare. I can tell by the look. I can tell by the look in the waitress's eyes that I am one of the few manly men like she's ever seen.
How would you like your chicken? I'd like it bloody, please. Give me some of that bloody chicken. That's what I want. for those that weren't listening earlier in a previous podcast last week, a week before, Caleb was out of pocket because he failed to cook his chicken correctly. But you ordered it? You got it at a restaurant?
It was out of my pockets, all right.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Yeah, no, it was a chicken sandwich, and the chicken breast is thicker on one end and the other end. I started on what I believe to be the good end, and then that last bite, I was like, man, I feel like that was squishier than it's supposed to be. But I'd had enough cold beers that I went ahead and choked her on down. And next morning, in the wee hours of the morning, I realized the root of my mistakes.
I gotta believe there was some bourbon or beer. Yeah, we got to believe there's some bourbon or beer involved.
Hunger leads to bad decisions.
I mean, if you really want to know how it worked out, it all came out pretty smoothly.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. We will give you all kinds of fishing discussions with three of the greats right here in front of me on iTunes or Spotify. And don't forget to join the Bite Me group page because that's where we get a lot of the questions, a lot of the topics, etc. It did remind me, though, and I'll bet you anything. We love story time here. Captain Dean and Captain Scott have something similar. When I was in college, obviously still had the bug, went fishing as much as I could. And we went fishing. I think we went to Surfside. And me and a couple of buddies went fishing. And all we were catching was hardheads and whatever. We were drunk, and everything else. And one of the guys was a little too drunk. And he says, well, dang it, I wanted to eat some fish. I'm just going to eat a couple of these hardheads. So we caught some more hardheads, threw them in the ice box, and he cooked up the hardheads, and nobody ate them but him. And I finally told him, because he was like scarfing it down, I said, what does it taste like? He said, ketchup, because he just covered it and doused it in ketchup.
Tastes like ketchup, man.
It tastes like ketchup. So he had his little hardhead nuggets going on.
I mean, it's just food.
It's just, well, is it?
That bad?
There was a huge conversation on the Port A fishing board about eating hardheads. And man, it was 50-50 across the board. There were a lot of people who not so fond, but there were others that absolutely were singing the praises. So you never know till you try. But
All right.
I've never been that hungry.
I'd be curious of the negative side ones, how many had actually tried it.
Probably
That's true.
So. Exactly.
Probably zero.
Yeah.
Zero, yeah.
The ones that were on the
my
positive
dad-
side, they actually ate it.
My dad used to just love eating gaff top. A lot of people eat gaff top.
If you like
but
ketchup, they're delicious.
Yeah,
It doesn't taste like that.
They say kingfish is delicious. It's a weird time.
So that interesting. So last week I kept one of the kingfish that we caught, brought it home, and blackened it. It was delicious. I've heard it go. I've heard that story. So there you go. Hardheads, kingfish. When kingfish is fresh, never frozen, it's absolutely delicious. Blackened does not. I mean, you get the full flavor of the fish. You're not covering it with everything else. But it was great. Cooked it a couple days. Loved it. Next time you're over, Caleb, I'm going to treat you to a kingfish.
I'm not gonna lie, I've had kingfish.
Yeah, I didn't love it, and then just when I cleaned it, and it was when I cleaned it, and it was the color of dirty snow already, just like that nasty gray color.
And when you cook it up, it turns white. You put it next to anything else, and it looks like every other delicacy you've ever had. Hey, people eat mullet. Hey, if you want to see a diverse diet, go to Louisiana. Look what them boys eat over there.
Yeah. They'll eat just about anything.
We got
Scott, you haven't weighed in. You got any wild fish ketchup stories?
I've eaten mullet over in Florida. Smoked mullet.
Mm-hmm.
It was damn good. I couldn't get enough of it. It was really, really good. You're down in the Everglades. And, I mean, tastes like any other kind of smoked fish. It was good.
Yeah, we got a couple of guys on the comments here on the YouTube live channel as we're recording the podcast talking about jackfish. Now, jackfish is more common, isn't it, Scott? As far as like what people will eat and not eat or whatever. No.
Have you ever cut open a jackfish and looked at it?
I've never had. No, I'm not saying I have, but I seem to. Maybe I was just mistaken. I seen maybe it's skipjacks.
No,
skipjack cream
cut open
cheese
a jackfish.
dip is
I mean,
what Scott says.
Yeah, it's so red when you cut open a jack. I mean, it looks like a raw steak.
It looks like a tuna fish.
People will pay you better money for jacks for shark bait than they'll pay you to eat eaten fish. They're bloody, greasy things.
I have eaten one though.
They're nasty.
Well, we ate a jackfish one time when I was younger. It was actually really good.
See, there you go.
I mean, I gotta admit, but my buddy in high school, a little Japanese guy, and his mom didn't even hardly speak English. I mean, straight over from Japan, and I caught a big jack, and I'm going to throw it back. He starts yelling at me, "Don't throw it back! Don't throw it back! My mom wanted it." I said, no, she doesn't. She does not want this jackfish. Promise me. No. If she finds out we throw back this fish, I'm in trouble. So
if you go to the Asian delis,
I thought
in Houston, they have the Asian markets, and one of their main items are skipjacks or the ladyfish.
Yeah.
That is a staple in the Korean markets. So to each his own, man.
Well, we kept the jack in the nice chest, and we get back home, and his mom's all excited.
Some people go for the medium rare
jackfish tonight.
Well, she's super excited about this, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever, it's not great fish. And then I got invited for dinner for bringing the fish.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
And you ate every
I was
bit
polite.
of it.
I went over there. It was actually really good. I mean, she made she was a hell of a cook, and she made like 6 different things with it, and all of it was good. But I wouldn't know how she did any of it.
All right, boys. Dean, I know you've been out on the water. I'll get to you in a second. Caleb, how much have you been out on the water? The first topic we had was mine. And most all these are from listeners. But I've just been noticing fishing seems to have, we've had a couple bad days here and there, Caleb, but fishing seems to be heating up pretty good, and the heat definitely seems to be heating up. So I really wanted to just kind of start with what you guys have been seeing out there, and if anything is changing, because there's a topic that ties in with this in terms of what we're all throwing right now. What do you think, Caleb? What's been happening?
I've been polling in this stuff. It's pretty warm out there.
I guess.
Man, we still have schools of redfish in a lot of areas. The trout and on the deeper drifts are that fishing is going pretty well. It's still pretty solid, I'd say. A lot of little shrimp in the marsh. Still seeing some little shad here and there. So it's still pretty solid over here where I'm at.
And the heat is not really affecting anything, huh? I kind of, one of the things, these first three topics that I put down are all kind of together, because we all saw the video of the Surfside bait kill. I don't know what they were. Scott probably will remember. But the bait kill and the heat of the water heating up, the temperature of the water heating up, et cetera. So you're not seeing any of that right now.
I've seen a bunch of that shad kill. That happens every year. No biggie on that. This is the first week that we're really getting the wave of like 94 to 100. Those shallower marshes are going to start getting hot. Fish will quit hanging in them quite as good. They're there right now. It's not going to be long before I'm more on shorelines and drop offs than I am in the backwater. So it's getting there, but I haven't quite seen the summertime thing yet. Although I would give it in the next week or two, and we'll start seeing that.
Dean, I was down in Aransas this weekend, and I felt like you didn't believe me fully when I told you that we hooked up with about 3 or 4 tarpon. You kept asking, like, where'd you catch those? Where'd you catch? But I'll be dog, man. The tarpon were on those deep drop-offs. What have you been seeing otherwise?
It's been good everywhere. The redfish and trout, like Caleb said, the conversation is a lot about the heat, but it's just getting started. It hadn't really sunk in like it's going to be in July and August. So the heat is just getting cranked up. So, it's still normal over here. We still got really high tides during the midday, which brings in a lot of water with those tides. We got a lot of wind that's blowing, which helps too. When it gets to those days where the wind just lays down and the sun is baking that water, it really changes it at that point. But it's just getting started. But yeah, I've been fishing a lot and drifting the flats. There's great redfish. The speckled trout are where they're expected to be, along the edges of the channels, outside of Trailer Island, outside of Quarantine Shoreline, the Lydian Channel, the drop-offs. A lot of the fishing around the Corpus Christi Ship Channel is just, it's out of whack right now because there's dredging going on throughout the channel. There's 5 dredges that have been going full time. So there's a lot of just dirty water out there. So, that used to always be my go-to favorite for summer, but that's been very difficult to fish. But it's like, the kingfish, the jetties, man, it's just crazy on fire right now. We talked about that a little bit last week
out there,
how many options there are. And then we said also, the topic of discussion is going to become the heat. We need some tropical activity. It's that time of year where things start brewing in the Gulf, and that will mess up the rhythm of the heat.
Hush your mouth.
And
hey, what's unfortunate?
Tropical activity.
No, yeah, I want tropical stuff to come from the Gulf, just not, number 5 Harvey to come over on my roof again. But so when the storms are brewing in the Gulf, it pushes in fresh water. And as long as it's not on your head, it creates some amazing fishing. I've always said what's unfortunate for my neighbors in the Gulf, like when storms are going around Louisiana or south, and it creates some great fishing for us. But it is what alters the weather in the summer. It's what counteracts the heat. But
Scott, all those shad that were killed, et cetera, Caleb said it's something that we see every year. Anything to make of this? Because that was a question I got from a listener.
Zero.
And it was on the group page as well.
Yeah, zero. My concern level is zero. That's a common every year, happens somewhere all the time. It's just a combination of we had 0 winds and hot temperatures and way too many bait fish in one place. They eat up all the oxygen. They die. I mean, shad. I mean, try to keep shad alive in a live well. You can pour pure oxygen to them, and they'll still belly up. You cannot keep. Yeah, you can't keep shad alive. I mean, you can baby them all you want, and they're still going to go belly up on you.
And for every one floating, there's 100 left alive.
Oh yeah. There's still a bunch of them.
Oh yeah. There's all kinds. Caleb, the next thing that's all this is together with the last week or so that we've seen on the group page and everything. And you were kind of the impetus on this topic from a question and a post that we had, like getting the most out of a feeding frenzy. You had some great video. You had some great play-by-play, if you will. An absolute feeding frenzy. We've seen, jacks. We've seen all kinds of feeding frenzies right now off the jetties, etc. But you ran into just a bleep ton of redfish. How'd you make the most of that? And what should our listeners know about that?
It's kind of dead opposite of what you think it takes to catch fish like that. What they're, in the frenzy, obviously there's a big wad of bait and a big wad of fish eating them, right? But it's much like Scott and I have talked about 100 times with those redfish that we couldn't catch in that tournament because of all of the shad. They are essentially, the reason you're seeing that big explosion on the top is because they're going down below those fish and they're just opening their mouths and swimming upwards. It is near impossible to catch them in the middle of that. But that group of fish swims away from what they're feeding on. And if you can get in front of them as they're leaving, as they're turning around, and as they're coming back, that's whenever you have a real good shot at catching them. While they're running around all crazy and blowing stuff up, that's just time to video it and say, "Oh, dude, that was cool." It took me multiple tries to figure that out over the years because it's all you can do to not be trying to chunk something in them while they're blowing everything up, and that it's really difficult. But just stay off of them. As far as prolonging it and keeping it going, stay off the edge, watch them move, throw to them as they move, but don't run up in the middle of them for sure.
See, Scott, that's exactly what I was going to ask you because, we're kind of conditioned to get to the fish when you see them feeding, but you've talked about this in the past. Like you kind of want to be what Caleb just said. You kind of want to be strategic with where you are as it relates to the blow-ups that are happening in front of you. Correct?
Yeah. If they're really blowing up into the schools and you see that bait ball and it's got dime size, quarter size little shad in it and they're just ripping through there, you're a spectator. Just sit back and enjoy the show because it's damn near impossible to get them to eat when they're doing that. That's generally a middle to upper coast thing. You don't see it so much from me south, from Port O'Connor south. You don't see the shad, little button shad like that. Galveston, Matagorda, all up in the marshes. Anywhere you got fresh water pouring in, that's typically where you start seeing that kind of stuff. It's tough, man. I mean, when you're sitting there and you're looking at it and you can see the fish. Hell, that day Caleb and I were doing it. Hell, we had the fish named. Oh, there's Bill. Bill's come back for another round. And
we named the dumb one that wouldn't eat Dean. I didn't name him. Scott named him.
It wasn't Caleb, of course.
We just sat there. The funny part was watching Caleb go through everything in my tackle box.
And he had a lot.
Like
a lot.
Yeah. He was sitting here. He looked like a raccoon, man. He was going through everything in my box, picking up something, tying it on, throwing it 3 times, pick something else. Tackle box was a damn mess. And
I didn't put anything back.
Anything. No, he didn't put anything back. Well, you threw it back.
None of it worked. Why would you put it back? It all sucked.
Just throw it away. So, Dean, then there's other feeding frenzies. That was more redfish or whatever. What about jacks and such that are kind of on the jetties and their feeding frenzy?
I mean, they're all unpredictable. I mean, there's no like textbook answer for that. You kind of, what we get down here is we get the bait balls, we get dusky anchovies that start getting pushed up to the surface. And when they got those things herded into a pile, you just work around the edges. You know, you try not to go through the middle of it and disrupt them, but they'll shift directions, you know, without giving you much notice. So it's hard to be patient. I mean, it is hard to sit back. And then, you know, that game changes from day to day. If they're giving you a minute or two to approach them quietly, then you can take that approach. But if they're blowing up and then they're gone within, you know, 15 or 30 seconds, I mean, it happens both ways. You know, you charge in there and you get one good cast and you go for that hookup. But they're unpredictable is the, you know, there's no easy way to describe that. There's not always a certain direction they're going. At the jetties, it's kind of, you have the wind, you have the current, and the tide. So you have the current flowing along the jetties like the Gulf current, and then you get tide that's either going in and out of the jetties will create a rip line, and then the wind will be a part of that also. So how you approach it can always be unpredictable.
Yeah, the way I look at it is the size of a bait fish versus the size of the predator. Yeah, if you got bigger bait fish, you know, even on jacks or redfish or anything, it's a school of relatively large bait fish for the fish that you're after. Then you got a much better shot at it. If they're really small compared to the size of the predator, like those little bitty button shad that Caleb and I were on. Also, this past year, I had baby tarpon, just dozens and dozens of baby tarpon on the jetties. And you couldn't even tell what they were eating until finally, right next to the boat, one came up. And it was, I mean, I don't even know what kind of bait fish it was, but they were like a quarter to a half inch long and almost clear. But there was thousands and thousands of them in these schools. If you've got those little bitty bait balls and then bigger predators, it's going to be really, really difficult to catch them because there's nothing you can do to imitate a bait ball of any type like that.
So a ball of bait.
the bigger the bait fish, the more opportunity you have to match it. But when it's that micro bait, man, that makes it really tough. The only way that I've seen flounder do it, Spanish mackerel, little baby tarpon, trout, reds, they'll all do it from time to time where they just open their mouth and cut through those little clouds of bait. The only thing that I've ever found that works, and it doesn't work all the time, is a clear soft plastic with glitter in it. You know, the holographic glitter, and throw that in there. And I guess maybe it looks like a little small school of bait broke off, you know, from the main group, and they'll take a swing at it sometimes. But that's about it.
And they do like things moving
fast.
at the jetties. I mean, you never they never hit anything that's just sinking or pausing. They always want something moving fast because everything out there moves fast.
Just terrified. So, yeah, they're scurrying. They're scurrying about. All right, last of these combo topics here that has to do with the heat. And I hadn't really thought about this that much, but I guess I do change. The question came, and I don't have the full question in front of me, but basically, how much do you change what you're throwing over the course of the year? Caleb, I'll start with you. When it's real hot, are you throwing something altogether differently, or does it still matter with what you're seeing in terms of bait versus, you know, the fall versus the winter versus the spring? I think this guy has actually had a hard time fishing, if I remember the question correctly, in the heat and kept trying different things. So wanted to know from you three guys, you know, are you throwing anything different depending on the season and the temperatures?
Yeah, in the spring, whenever you got the smaller baits and the little flashy things, I'll throw small little flashy things. In the summer, when you've got the bigger baits moving around, I'll throw a bigger bait. I just kind of match what's going on. You know, my 90% day to day, no, I don't change it, but I'm throwing some sort of small paddle tail for a redfish 90% of the time. But whenever I'm out wading, drifting, trying to catch trout, trying to catch stuff in the bay, yeah, I'm matching whatever's going on around where I'm at. In the summertime, I'll change it up and I'll throw a little small mirror lure, little John, or, you know, that little K Wiggler Junior, stuff like that. But probably my biggest change really is just in the spring whenever you've got the glass minnows and the shad and all that kind of stuff. That's where I'm going small and shiny, especially if I'm looking for trout in the bay.
You know, Dean, I was thinking more along the lines of I do change colors because the water clarity tends to change during the course of the year. I don't think it's necessarily the temperature of the water, but what are your thoughts on that in terms of what you're throwing depending on temperature and season?
I stick with the same stuff. The thing that changes is the retrieve rate, whether you go slower or faster to match what's going on. Fish get really lethargic in the heat. They still expect things to be moving, but they're not going to eat as much and as often. They're not going to really be on the prowl hunting things down. I mean, and that hasn't really shifted gears yet. I mean, we're getting some great fish on top water. They're blowing up on that stuff. So, but you know, in July, if nothing changes, you just got to really slow it down. I mean, I stick with the same colors with the same lures. The little K Wiggler Jr., the small one, it does make a difference. You know, it's easier to work through the grass, sits on their face a little longer and has a more natural movement to it because it is smaller. But for me, I just change. I use the same stuff, but slow it down dramatically. So it hangs on their face longer. And there's times, you know, we have a lot of crystal clear water and you watch fish, you can see their reaction. You'll see a cruising red and you'll get a great cast at them. And if you run it past them, I mean, they won't even turn and look. They'll just completely disregard it. But if you give it a second or two and let them focus their attention on it, it'll just kind of agitate them for an extra second and you'll get a reaction out of them sometime. And it's not going to be a dramatic bite where they hit it and take off running. You'll just see your lure disappear. And then, you know, that fish is not going to run very far, but you got to set the hook pretty quick.
Yeah, when they get like that, you got to talk them into eating. Yeah, I'll do it all the time for my polling platform. You know, whether it's a fly or lure, you know, reel, and I'm trying to get them to get it in front of them, and then I just say, stop it, let it drop. And the same thing on a fly, strip, stop, let it drop. And if you let it drop in that perfect spot right in front of their face, they can't handle it. You know, but if you kept stripping or you kept reeling, they'll let it go right on by them. They get weird when it gets hot, and everything slows down. Their metabolism slows down. Their oxygen levels are lower, and they just get a little more lethargic. So you got to talk them into eating.
By the way, I'm liking this this triple teaming here of all three of you guys because it's less of me, and I like the different aspects of the same topic that you guys are offering here. We're gonna have a game, and Caleb loves a good game. Who doesn't? But I do want to send this. I do want to talk with JT just a little bit because we've had questions about testing a boat. A lot of people in the market for a boat. Kind of a step-by-step tutorial, if you will. JT Koshi over at the Boat Yard on testing a boat correctly. All right, boys. Let's get to, because there's topics within this game, and that's why I'm doing this. We got like I want to say 4 or 5 points here. We're going to go around the horn, baseball style. We'll go Caleb, Scott, and Dean in that order. I don't know how much you guys have looked at these, but I think there's some topics and some fun stuff that we can do with regard to all this. And it's a would you rather game. Caleb, first with you. Would you rather never know what the tide is going to do or never know what the wind is going to do for the rest of your life when you go fishing? And then Scott and Dean, I'll just back off.
Are we assuming we ever know what the wind's going to do in the first damn place?
Well, we think we
my
know
answer.
what the we think we know what the wind is going to do, but there are things to learn from this. But what would you if you had to, like, you knew what the wind was going to do, you knew what the tide was going to do, and you had to take away one of them?
I'd rather not know what the tide was going to do. I can tell you what the tide's doing as soon as I get there, but I can't. What the wind's going to do for the next 3 hours means a lot to me. I have a little bitty boat.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, unless I'm really preparing for a tournament or a guided trip or something, I don't look at the tide a whole heck of a lot. I know I'm showing up at the ramp about 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to go out and go sight cast, and that's what I know. And the tide isn't going to dictate whether I get there at 10 o'clock or 7 o'clock, right? So yeah, definitely, I would like to know what the wind going to do while we're answering that question.
Dean, I mean Scott.
Yeah, if there's some way that we can figure that part out on the wind, I'll take the wind. Yeah, it kind of depends on what I'm doing too. If I'm doing the redfish thing and I'm going poling, I don't care what the tide's doing. I'm gonna figure it out. I'll figure out the fishing. The wind is a lot more important for the entire setup of my day. Where I'm gonna start, where I want to finish. You know, what kind of water I'm gonna fish based on the wind, because I'm not gonna fish open water if I got to pole into it. If I'm going to the jetties, I'm gonna go tarpon fishing. They're both pretty damn important. You know, I mean, I need an outgoing.
If yours was going to be wind.
Yeah, I'm going to need an outgoing tide, and I'm going to need a light wind so I can be on the beachfront. You know, so
well, good luck,
man. That's tough to not know one or the other. But like Caleb said, you could have perfect wind on the beachfront. If you got no tide, you got no fish. So that's a tough one. If I was in Florida, it'd have to be the tide. You know, the tide's everything in Florida.
I got to be different, man. I mean, I could live. It's windy every day. I get to where I don't even care about the wind. Yeah. So I want to know what the tide to me is the most critical. It's going to be, but I live on ultra shallow flats that are vast and endless. So the tide dictates where I'm going to be that day. And then whichever the direction the wind blows, I just deal with that kind of as a secondary issue. So I couldn't live without knowing what the tide is doing.
All right. This is a different kind of question. I don't know how much fishing knowledge our listeners are going to get out of this, but I think they're going to get something out of it. This time we'll go Dean, Scott, and then Caleb.
Would you rather we were going to do the same way every time?
Oh, did I? Well, don't listen to me. You know better than that. This time we'll go Dean, Scott, and then Caleb. Would you rather get stung by a jellyfish for 5 minutes or pinched by a big blue crab for 5 minutes?
I take the crab all day long. Crab. Jellyfish is bad, man. The jellyfish is going to sit on you for 5 minutes, but it ain't going away after 5 minutes. You can take the crab off, and that's going to go away. The jellyfish is going to stick with you for like 2 weeks.
There is no worse feeling than you start to feel that sting, and you're like, crap. And let's say it's on your calf, and you're like, okay, and you try to shake it off or whatever and wipe it, and you're like, you can never. I never see really the jellyfish. I see jellyfish everywhere except the one that's stinging me. Scott, what about you?
Yeah, I'm with. I'll take the crab all day, every day.
5 minutes.
I hate jelly. I can stand that. I can sit there and look at that crab and know that's going to be over in 5 minutes. But I look at that jellyfish and I know I got misery, just pure absolute misery coming at it for a long time.
Does it matter where the crab is pinching you?
Let's say that was your neck.
Oh shit! I'll still go with the jellyfish.
Caleb?
Neither one of them want me to pee on them is the problem.
This is true.
I was waiting for one of them to go jellyfish. I was biting line one time and got jellyfish on my lips. That's a good one. Crab. That's an easy one.
Crab. The reason I said calf is because that happened to me. It's been a few years now, and I shook it off, and I'm like, crap, and I was trying to get it off, and I did this I rubbed my finger above my eye. Man. Dude, come on now.
Back in the good old days, whenever I wore them great big heavy ray guard boots, instead of realizing a stingray bite once probably wouldn't be as bad as wearing those things all the time. Mm-hmm. I had a jellyfish go down it and get these things are almost knee high, and the jellyfish was down around my ankle at night. And what are your choices? Do you reach in and get him all over your hand and arm? Like, what are your choices there, right? It's tough.
How about Lawrence said this weekend he was getting hammered by a horsefly Dude, horseflies don't play. They don't play at all, man. That
And you
is the
can't
worst.
kill them. I mean,
Yeah.
I have sat there and knocked the hell out. I'm just swatting them. I mean, killed them, laying over dead, flat on their back, laying on the deck. And a few seconds later, they kind of twitch a little bit and they get back up and they fly off, or they turn around and sting your ass again. I hate horseflies. Marsh horseflies are the worst.
All right, so this time, because I'm throwing curve, I want to make sure I'm keeping y'all's attention. This time we'll go Scott, Caleb, and then Dean. Scott, Caleb, and then Dean. I want y'all to think about the worst breakup of your life. The absolute worst, nastiest, meanest, ugliest breakup of your life. Okay? We all have it.
Dr. Phil.
Would you rather take your worst ever breakup fishing or take your worst boss? Scott?
I'll take the chicken sandwich.
Yeah. Nope. Well, my worst boss is dead. I mean, he's long.
So you took him fishing.
Scott took 15 years off this man's life.
Yeah.
Such a terrible boss. Scott just pranked him all the time.
Yeah, Caleb knows exactly what I'm talking about. That was a fun episode that we did on Caleb's little extinct podcast.
That's right. That's right.
I guess I guess I'd have to take the worst ex because she wouldn't talk to me. I mean, you know.
Oh yes, she would. What world do you live in? What
world? She was done.
You son of a.
Nah, she just
you.
She'd just sit back there with her arms crossed and stare at me like it's gonna bother me. That ain't gonna bother me.
John
the
Parker
worst
says,
boss, man. The worst boss.
He was that bad?
God, he's such a pain. Yeah. He'd probably have me writing reports on every fish I missed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
John Parkoff says, "Can we throw the worst breakup overboard?" I don't know, Caleb. I mean, I know you've had some nasty breakups. You had to have had some nasty breakups.
Man, we might get a little deeper in this than you intended. My worst breakup is still pretty stinking attractive and still messages me about.
Lord, don't take her. Please don't take her.
She messages me 2 or 3 times a year because she needs, and I quote, closure. It's been 20 years.
What?
And yeah, I've been with my wife about 20 years, and it's been okay.
But she's looking for closure after 20 years.
Closure, dog. We should meet up. I said, well, you gonna tell your husband? No, I'm not gonna. I shouldn't. I looked right at my wife. I was like, hey, this chick's texting me closure, just so you know, because this could get weird. So while it could be entertaining, I'm not sure it's the best thing for my marital and family status. Therefore, I bet she still looks good in a bikini. Therefore, I could probably take my worst boss because, to be honest, most of my bosses were pretty cool, but I don't take directions well. Therefore, we didn't get along that great, and they kind of acted like a dick, but it was rightfully so.
You don't blame them.
Yeah. So upon deep thought on this one, I'm probably going to take my boss. He's probably a pretty nice guy.
You know what? I think we all agree that's probably the right answer. You don't want the closure girl on your boat.
The whole time you're asking this question, I'm thinking, man, my wife listens to about every 5th one of these.
Dean, you've bound to have had a horrible, horrible, horrible breakup.
Mine's too easy.
Really?
Easy. I would take every boss I ever worked with.
all the bad ones.
I put 10 of them on the boat and have a great day. Too easy.
It was
Not
that
even
bad.
A trick question.
It was
I don't
that
need
bad.
to explain that one.
You know,
I could have answered that one for Dean.
You can flip this around backwards if you'd like. This whole question you got here, I was fishing.
Caleb's still thinking.
Well,
he still can't decide. He still can't decide.
I'm fishing this big corporate tournament once, right?
You did
and
what?
I have a major oil company has hired me. They hired like 4 or 5 of us, me, Pat, all kinds of people. And it was 2 or 3 days worth of fishing. The last day, the boss's kid wants to come fishing with me. The guy that owns the company, the big guy, probably a billionaire of the B, right? Thousands of people work for him, right? And so at this point, they're asking me, "Hey, can the kid go?" And I'm like, "Look, I've already got 4 on my boat. 5's too much." And they're pretty much great. You know, his name's Greg or whatever. You're gonna love him. I'm like, "Okay, well, that went well." And then we show up the next morning, and Greg's dad is also there. Now I got 6, and this guy owns the company. And they had told me like, "Hey, this is the owner. Like, it's gonna change my personality at all. Hey, just so you know, that's the owner." All right, cool. And we're idling out of the harbor, and he's just standing on the front of the boat drinking a cup of coffee. And it's during a pretty big tournament. There's hundreds of boats, and in front of Matagorda Harbor, it gets pretty sloshed out when everybody's leaving.
Oh yeah.
And I said, I looked at the little subordinate of his. I said, "Hey, you should tell so and so to grab a seat. We're about to go." And so, hey, captain says sit down, and the guy looks at him like nods his head, like okay, and he just keeps standing there drinking his coffee. So I look at him. I'm like, "Hey man, could you take a seat? I'm about to go." And he grabs a piece of aluminum and stand there and keeps drinking his coffee. And I said, "Hey, I need you to sit down." And he goes, "I'll be all right." I said, "Sit down." And man, he looked at me and like just waddled his little butt to the back and sat down. I didn't have a problem out of that guy the rest of the day. So, hey, you can turn it around. You are the boss on that boat. So I can see where Dean might be going with this.
There's the boss, and then there's the captain.
Yep.
All right. I've lost track of who's going first on all this stuff, but I'll go Caleb, Dean, then Scott. I'm just keeping you guys on your toes. Post your best, most reliable fishing spot on all your social media. I mean, this is the when times are tough, I know I can catch fish here place. Or go 2 weeks without catching a single fish.
I'm not saying I posted my most reliable spot, but somebody damn sure did.
Last time you were there, it was an armada.
What is happening right now? Oh boy. I mean, we're getting to the time of year where we're going to practice going 2 weeks without catching a fish fairly often, I think. Man. I think I'd post my favorite spot, and then I'd go sit in a couple of them booby traps on the way to it and just enjoy my day.
All the guys tearing up their hull.
Yeah, that's my final answer.
Dean?
Man, who thought of these questions?
You're a humble host.
That's a hell of a game. I would probably the way that things are advertised nowadays, it's hard to have a secret spot that's all to your own. So
yeah, but there are secret spots that not a lot of boats fish.
Post 2 weeks ain't that long.
It ain't that short. So
I could make up enough excuses for 2 weeks to deal with that than to have to deal with the aggravation that's going to come with the long-term repercussions of the other. If I had to choose, I'm going to take 2 weeks of just spinning the story into why it sucks.
That's my specialty. I got so many stories from my career. We're not catching fish. I'm telling stories like a mofo. I mean, Scott.
Are we talking me personally not catching a fish, or my customers not catching a fish?
You cannot catch fish on your boat for 2 weeks.
Oh, I like Dean said, man. You got to be a damn comedian. You got to have a lot of stories. You got to have a lot of stuff. You got to have.
Yeah,
you got to have some. Exactly. You got to have some crappy weather. I mean, you got to have something on your side, man. I mean, if it's perfect weather and you're still not catching fish, and the tide's looking, oh man, that's brutal. Absolutely brutal. I know where
you're leaning.
Yeah, go ahead and post a picture of the jetties. That's my most consistent place. I mean,
that's a cop out. Look at you finding a loophole. Look at you finding a loop. That's not. I'm talking about your best, your personal best. That's everybody's.
When somebody told me I never run out of BS to talk about, that's when I knew I could be a fishing guide.
That's right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Caleb, have you noticed? Go ahead, Scott.
I mean, hell, I was a cop for 20 plus years, and I did homicide for 13. I got stories, man. I can just we can just go on and on and on and on with the stories, but
Hey,
yeah,
I
not
already
catching
have a title
fish.
for
That's
my
hard.
autobiography. It's going to be called 8 Hours of Bullshit. When I write the story of my fishing life, that is the title of my book.
When you see that
I
post
have
on Facebook,
contemplated this.
when you see that post on Facebook that says describe what you do for a living poorly, there it is. 8 hours of bullshit.
Exactly.
Yep.
I've thought about this for 20 years.
Caleb, have you noticed that whenever I post these questions, these would you rathers or either ors, Scott always tries to find a little loophole. Like, well, can I do this, or is this that, or whatever?
Yeah.
Trying to manipulate the system.
Yeah.
What's the question was, can you lie about your favorite spot or not catch fish for 2 weeks?
Yes,
That was the
exactly.
question.
All right,
I mean,
this is this.
I'm just,
go ahead, Scott.
I'm just thinking
Yeah,
it through.
well, no.
That's all.
You are doing that. You're looking
Sometimes
for a
when I run
loophole.
out of stories, I tell Scott stories and act like they're mine.
One time I was chasing this murderer.
You wouldn't believe it. Shot some shots right in the ground. It's crazy.
That's right.
Plagiarism as well.
All right, this is one of my favorites. It had me thinking about the old days and fishing with my dad and all that. I got the idea for this one because I kept a bunch of my dad's old reels, the old Penn and 209, 309. Y'all know what they are. And I'm like, so would you rather fish the rest of your life with an old Penn level wind reel and your current rod, or a cane pole and your current reel? So in other words, you got to have the old reel, but an updated rod, or a brand new reel, but a cane pole. Dean?
I'm going to go cane pole new reel.
Mm-hmm.
Because
why?
I don't know why. More than likely, I'm going to be able to get it out there than trying to. I don't think the rod is going to compensate for the reel in that situation, and the reel may compensate for the rod. But
just don't hook on anything big.
Well, then you're going to have to rely on your drag. It's not going to be a lot of rod bending action. It's going to just be pointed at the fish and see how.
Dean, I think we got a YouTube challenge ahead of us now.
Is that for 2
That's
weeks
a great
or forever?
Yeah.
What is the duration of this question?
We'll go out on. I got some old pens. I just got to get them. Take them to Anglers
No, we're not doing
Anonymous.
that. We're gonna put a decent reel on a cane rod. We're not even trying what you're talking about, unless we're going snapper fishing or something.
I remember those old big pens. What do you say, Scott?
Pass.
See what I mean? Here we go again.
Yeah, pass. I mean,
is the cane pole 8 feet long, or
there's no correct answer here? Both suck.
No, cane pole's like 10 foot. 12.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it can be. I mean, it depends on what kind of cane you got. So I mean, is my Penn reel oiled up and nice like a new one? Like fresh out of the box, new, and just an old style reel. I mean, where are we at on this? I mean, I need more information.
Delaney wants to know the diameter of the cane pole. People are really, the only kind of thinking is overthinking.
Is this red cane or yellow cane?
It's sugar cane?
Yeah.
And the more I think about it, a cane pole doesn't have eyes on it.
No. I guess you could put one on.
Yeah,
I guess
there's eyes on a cane. Oh, yeah, you're right.
No, it's just got
it just ties. I guess you would have to. Yeah, for the sake of this discussion, you would have to. Caleb?
Now we're just inventing shit.
Oh, well, I mean, I thought I had it figured out until you said there wasn't no guides on the cane pole. This changes everything. Man,
give me the old reel and a new rod.
I mean, if we're being honest, give me an old reel, a new rod, and I'm going snapper fishing. That's black drum, Gasper goo.
Ooh. The old Gasper goo.
I'm gonna be the deep dropper of the Matagorda Bay complex. It seems like.
All right, last one here, and this was a very tough one for me. I don't know about you guys. Would you rather
Easy.
fish? Really? Okay, I'll start
Yeah.
with you then, Scott. Would you rather fish in the 1970s, the 1990s, or currently, but you can only use the equipment, electronics, and boats from those eras?
Late 70s. Easy.
Those were deep V's, man.
I don't
Those were some
care. I
deep V
waited.
holes.
I loved wading, man. I mean, put me in the late 70s, and I can go catch all the fish in the world, man. I mean,
It's a bold
I
statement,
did it.
Cotton.
I did it, man. It was fun. And see, the late 70s is the perfect time because you were just starting to get low profile reels. The Shimano's were just coming around, so you could have that. You get, you're putting me on the equipment, right? So I got low profile reels. Graphite rods were coming around late 70s.
You don't have GPS.
So I don't need GPS. I got that in my head. And I can get anywhere I need to go. I don't even use a GPS now. So yeah, I don't need that. But man, I mean, that was the sweet spot. We had a lot of fish, and redfish were coming back. I mean, that was the perfect time. Absolute perfect time.
Dean?
70s easy, man. That's you went out there and you earned it. You learned it, and there was no everybody else on the YouTube and everybody else on everywhere else. And I'd take the 70s any day. Give me my old Ambassador and no Fenwick rod and
the 5,000.
Yeah, a couple of Kakaho minnows, and we go to town on those fish. I still, man, I mean, I'm getting at that age now where I reminisce about the 70s quite often. So yeah, be nice to do that again.
That's when I really caught the bug in the late 70s. And
yeah,
I mean, really, really, really caught the bug in the late 70s. And I kind of, to this day, it sounds silly, I kind of miss the dropping the little float with the weight on it to mark your spot for a drift. And I don't know how much you guys did that, but I did that all the time. And parking the boat, seeing if you can get shallow enough to get out and not drown yourself when you go wading and all that other stuff. I do miss that. Caleb, 70s, 90s, or currently, but you have to use that stuff.
Yeah, I was about to point out I'm the only one here that can't talk about the 70s, you bunch of old bastards. Another fun fact, YouTube straight screened Dusty's comics. It didn't even come up over there. I was looking at that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man, 70s, me and that bad breakup. What I was talking about, we could go out there and disco on the boat and have a good old damn time.
Y'all could have gone out there with John Travolta, man.
That's right. Can y'all
up some Shaka Khan?
I tell you what, Scott's the only one in this room qualified to imagine me in the 70s. Holy crap. Dean still lives in the 70s. I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, wow.
And he's talking about YouTubers. That's the most active YouTuber on this thread right now. Man, the 70s
back then.
70s seemed fun. Honestly, looking at the 70s, and this is, like I said, this is just guessing, so I'm not old. But the 70s, that seems like the era of like November now. And what I mean by that is in November, everybody looks like they can fish.
Yep.
The 70s sure seem like that way too. I go in all these houses, and anybody that fished any kind of what it consistently seems to have all these monster fish all over the wall, and it just looks like a pretty stinking good time. But as far as
I can see that from the outside looking in, it really wasn't that way. The people who were successful lived on the water. It was not I mean, you had to be, the OCD issues were like, you had to, I think we all have it, and you went out there and earned it, and you lived it. And there were people who kept secrets from everybody else. There was no you intentionally did not share your spots and stuff like that. So that is, I think that that still lives today, because those people were that were really successful, that would come back with those big fish consistently, were looked at as like, man, what is this person? How did they figure this out? Because there was still a lot of scratching. It wasn't automatic, but that was the difference back then. I say that all the time. You had to earn it. The only way to know those spots was to go out there and live it. And you scratched a lot, and then you learned what to do. And it just wasn't instant gratification of clicking on the YouTube and gathering this vast amount of information at your fingertips before you ever left the house. You had to go, and you didn't have radar on your iPhone, man. You sat out there in lightning storms. You had the weather that was no warning whatsoever. You didn't have live tides.
Okay, sounds like you're talking yourself out of the 70s.
No. I mean, it was just, Caleb was talking about that. It was automatic for everybody who fished back then, that it was like instantly a success. It wasn't an instant success. It was a different approach to working for that goal.
I will say this, Scott, because in the 70s, I didn't have a boat. I didn't get a boat until after I graduated college in '84. So it was a grind for me, but the best reason I would pick the 70s is access. Like where all these houses are now, and where all these other places that are limited now. I mean, I would see something in the water and just kind of cruise. I mean, I would deliberately like drive slow or on the shoulder to check out different bays or surf or whatever. And I could just pull over and go fishing, but I didn't have a boat. That's my one regret. I wish I had a boat in the 70s, but go ahead, Scott.
Absolutely, man. We could drive from the end of the seawall to San Luis Pass on the beach.
Yeah.
And stop anywhere we wanted to stop and catch fish. And the backside of Galveston Island was wide open. It was there was, Pirates Beach was there, a couple of Jamaica Beach, but everything else was wide open. I mean, there was pastures back there that had roads through them, and you just drove. As long as you closed the gate behind you, nobody really cared. You could just drive on through there and go park on the backside of the bay and start fishing. Just
Try
start
that
walking.
now.
Yeah. I mean, it was a different time, no doubt. And like Dean said, well, one of the old timers that I fished with a lot, his favorite saying was, "You learn it to earn it." And that's what we did. You went out there and you earned it by trial and error. You figured it out.
The late 70s, I was young. So, a teenager. I didn't have my own boat. I didn't have that stuff. But I grew up on Chocolate Bayou. My dad had a cabin right there on the bayou. And Captain Larry was with Big Larry. He owned the bait shop there. And another guy, Joe D. George, who built rods. These two guys were legends in my mind back then, and those guys could consistently catch fish when nobody did. And fortunate enough to be inspired by those guys to want to work as hard as they did to be successful. So I was lucky enough to be influenced by some guys in that era who were successful. And I don't know, man, to reminisce back to your childhood and the younger days of whenever it was what it was, you looked at those guys like they had some kind of a magical spirit that just put fish in the boat. But it's really different, man. It's really different. Everybody's got that iPhone with this instant information, and that's mainly what did not exist back then.
Caleb, your thoughts? So did you land on the 70s as well?
Nah, I'm just impressed with how passionate Paw gets when he gets defensive, man. I mean, 70 sounds great. I think I like it. Hell, I like today. I think I like all of it. I will say this. I've said it a million times on my boat. I caught a heck of a lot more fish back when I didn't have any idea what I was doing, because we had more grass here in the bay. There was less pressure. I go out there. I had a Texas Tackle Factory trout tamer. I think it was whatever Shimano had back then. and a bass assassin and some jig heads. That's all I carried with me. And I'd throw it out there and just pick my rod tip up and reel it back down. Pick it up, reel it back down.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it worked. There wasn't nearly as many variables as there is now.
I think part of that is like me. I'm not by any stretch saying I catch fish all the time, but I go fishing when I want to, which means when I want to is I got the conditions I want. I'm not worried about. I can go fishing for 8 hours or 3 hours or 1 hour. You know, it doesn't matter. So I think that's why, like, guys that have the luxury of not having to go can catch more fish. Go ahead.
I will point out that much like Dean said, I was very blessed to right out of the rip be around some incredible fishermen. So whenever I say I didn't know what I was doing, I was in a target rich environment, you know, then, because I'm telling y'all, you know, I grew up fishing in South Texas as a kid. The crazy ex-girlfriend, her grandfather was all into saltwater fishing. And so I was around Lavaca Bay and Seadrift, you know, in my teens and early 20s. And then I kid y'all not, like the second time I ever went fishing in Matagorda, I met this guy floating out in the middle of the bay and just happened to start talking to him. He started talking to me back. We become buddies. We're fishing together within a week, which blows my mind because he is quite possibly the biggest hater I've ever met in my life. I don't even know. Any other time, if somebody got within 300 yards of him and you're fishing with him, it's like, oh God, what's he going to do? Like, I mean, this guy would start a fight with kayakers. I don't know how it worked that day, but he's a prolific big trout fisherman. My learning curve got shortened in a huge way. And so, you know, our opinions are based on that too, right? If I really didn't know what I was doing, just going out there and just trying this and trying that, it probably wouldn't have worked as well as then, you know, going with Donnie and, hey, this is a great spot. Let's go fish it.
All right, we got three of the greats right here, and we've got what would Scott do, what would Caleb do, what would Dean do coming up. All right, boys, hot, and more hot. Man, I'll start, I guess, as further up the coast as possible. That would be you, Caleb. We're talking, I think today is going to be the coolest day of the week as we record this, and it's going to be 97 or 98. We're talking 100, we're talking 101 and more. But what about winds and tides? And if you have to go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Caleb, what are you doing?
Well, down on the coast won't be quite as bad, but it's going to be pushing 90. Got a pretty solid south wind. Me personally, I'm going to be in Brazoria, Texas, watching the boys play for their district playoffs. But man, it's getting that time of year. It's getting there. We're wading at daylight, you know, drifting in 3 or 4 feet of water. 10:30, 11 o'clock. It might be time to go get you a barbecue sandwich and chill out. We got long days. Get in the boat again about 4:30. Go back out until dark. We're getting into that zone. I was out Thursday. The water temperature is about 85. I was in schools of 15 to 30 fish, several of them, and I zeroed on Thursday. It's just getting to that point where it's getting a little tougher to catch them, and it's going to get hotter and get that way a little bit more. I was on the backside of a full moon. That didn't help a whole heck of a lot. But
right,
the guys that went out and drifted 3, 4, 5 feet of water did pretty stinking well that day, and we're getting into that time of year.
You know, Dean, he mentioned water temps. Well, actually, I'm going to start with, I'm going down the coast, so I'm going to go to Scott right now. He mentioned water temps. What would you do, and what are you seeing in terms of temp, and how's it affecting things?
Damn. I just for the first time glanced at the wind for this next week. Yeah. We got spoiled, man. We had so many days there, weeks where it was just light winds. Yeah, we're back to springtime now. Jeez,
I'm looking at it.
18 to 20, gusting 25 to 30. Yeah, that's not good. No fun. Well, I ain't going to the beachfront. I can tell you that. All that good surf fishing is out. If I were going on the weekend, I'd probably go try to find me some backwater somewhere. We're going to have big tides. You know, it's going to push that water up with that much wind out of the southeast. And tides are going to be way up. So I'd probably disappear back into the trees and then try to go find me some fish that are looking for some new water. You know, places that are flooding that haven't been flooded just recently. If I was trout fishing, I'd probably get out and wade because drifting's going to be a little tough. You're going to drift pretty quick. Maybe, it might be a 3-bag day, as Dean would say, and you could do it, but it probably wouldn't be a whole hell of a lot of fun. You cast a long ways though.
At least you got that going for you. Yeah. Speaking of the 3-bag days, I was hanging out with my wife and I were hanging out with Dean and Carrie. I guess that was Saturday evening. And I'm like, I got one drift sock on my boat. I think I'm going to need another one. He goes, you're going to need 2. You're going to need 2.
Yep.
But Dean, it's I don't mind the wind, down in the Aransas, because you can always find, some areas that are protected. You can maybe make some long drifts if you have enough drift socks or bags, as you call them. But man, we're talking. I'm looking at the forecast down there. It's 30.
Yeah. Man, I had jetty fever like crazy last week because it was amazing. But it's hard to trust the long-term forecast if it's going to stick with what it is. You never know when something's going to pop up and disrupt that a little bit. But yeah, the jetties is out for at least a week or 10 days. But yeah, you mentioned that where when the wind is blowing here, you can drift. There's drifts that are 2 miles long if you just want to stick to the grass beds and the sand holes, and you put out 3 drift socks to slow it down as much as possible. And every cast is a new sand hole. I mean, you just by pure effort, you can cross paths with some fish. But the heat's going to be an issue. I'm going to try to talk people into wade fishing a little more this week. I'm going to talk people into getting up very, very early. I mentioned that before. Whenever I tell them we're going to meet at the boat, at 5:45, they're like, Dean, dude, man, this is my vacation, baby, for us. Like, I'm going to drink a bottle of bourbon tonight. And I tell them, I say, well, don't quit drinking. Keep going.
just
be
come
there.
On.
But yeah, I mean, unfortunately for the forecast for this part of June is not what you would expect. I mean, I would never tell somebody 2 months ago that this is what you're going to be having in June is 15-mile-an-hour winds in the morning, gusting to 30 for 10 days in a row in the beginning of June. But we are coming up on the new moon, so that helps in a certain aspect of it. But nice long drifts. And then if you want to look at the positive side of things, the wind is better than sitting out there in 100-degree weather with no wind. That's the kiss of death. I mean, when you're sitting out there and there's no wind blowing and it's 95 to 100 degrees, that's misery. Nobody enjoys that.
Yeah.
So wade fishing early in the morning, hitting those drop-offs. And those places that I mentioned earlier, where you can walk about waist deep and cast out and reach 6 foot of water with some isolated grass beds and little, just not really drains or anything, just kind of indentions in between the grass beds, just a little contour to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And probably won't roam around a lot either. I'll pick a spot and just kind of grind it out in those areas. And try to get, daylight until 10 or 11 o'clock. And then, nobody is really wanting to be out there.
Then go home. And go home after that.
Nobody is going to be real inspired to stay past 11 or noon right now. So, but if you're on the water, if you get in your spot, by 6 or 6:15 or even 6:30, you get 3 or 4 hours of some really good fishing right now. And it still is the 1st of June. The bait fish are swarming the flats. There's a lot of life in the water, but it's just not going to be easy.
Those are 3 of the best that you'll ever hear. And we got pretty much the whole coast and their experience from Florida all the way down to the tip of the lower coast. I love having you guys on. I really like having all 3 of you guys. I really like that you guys. I'm proud of my 3 guys here because you're learning all the hand signals and what to do and how to get in on this thing. Last thing,
what hand signals? I didn't notice any of that.
The last thing we need to learn is to teach Scott that there's a little button right here in the front of your microphone that's called the cough button. So
Yeah. Well, the coughs are sneaking up on me, man. It's not like I feel them coming. It's just like all of a sudden,
we're almost there, Scott. We're almost there.
That's a $300 mic.
I did hit the button.
Scott. That
I hit the
$300
button
mic
like 3 or 4 different times.
It's designed to pick it up even if you lean back.
Yeah,
this is true. This is true. All right, so
in my defense, I did hit the button like 3 times and stopped.
You did?
It, but
well,
I missed.
Right. We're almost there. We're almost there. Hey, we got allstateroofs.com. I'm trying to take care of my guys here. You guys have, all our listeners have either thought about or tried to book some trips with our guys, and certainly take care of them. I call it gas money because Dean and Scott and Caleb largely do this just out of the kindness of their hearts. So if we can take care of them the best we can, I always try to do that. Caleb, hit us up with any info you might have, allstateroofs.com. I know people from the podcast have listeners to the podcast have taken advantage of that. What about fishing trips and all that other jazz?
If I'm in your backyard inspecting your gutters, please don't let your 125-pound cow dog out on me, as happened this morning.
It sure as heck did.
I almost cost them about $80 in cedar pickets whenever I ran through them.
But anyway, allstateroofs.com. And of course, if you have any trips available coming up, they can reach you via the podcast or your social media, Captain Caleb TV or Caleb McCumber. Dean, you got anything happening upcoming? You got any openings, anything?
Man, I got a lot of days open. Pretty booked up through June, but after July, man, there's a lot of good stuff open. And I get a lot of feedback. So a lot of fans of the podcast. Amazing how much conversation about the podcast takes place nowadays. Anybody who calls me to book a trip and mentions the podcast, I'm going to give them $50 off if they mention that they are fans of the podcast and want to come down. I'm going to do a $50 discount for half-day trips just because it's so good to hear from somebody. I was in South Padre. People were coming up to me, man. I hear it. I was standing in line at an event at the beach. Somebody heard my voice and they're like, hey, you're that dude on the podcast. So a lot of great feedback coming back. So I'm gonna offer a little discount to the listeners.
All right. How about that? Scott, I know you've got a full plate as well, but what do you need?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you got
coming up? Coming up mid-June or mid-July on. I've got some scattered openings during the week. Tarpon season should be kicking off. Hopefully this wind settles back down again and we're all good. I'm going to Belize and going to do a little fishing down in Belize the first week of
you dirty
July.
dog.
So,
you dirty
dog. We rented a private island.
Oh, excuse me.
It's pretty
dang.
I mean, it's pretty bougie. I mean, we're cool. We kind of cool like that.
If I had Scott's money, I'd buy my own island.
Go ahead, Caleb.
It'd be a little bitty island full of bird poop.
Dean's doing 75 off if you mention I'm their favorite host.
Oh, now here we go. Dean offered 50 off. Caleb's offering 75. Do I hear 100? Boy, we're going to be paying the listeners to go fishing with us here pretty soon. You guys have been awesome. It's about that time, and what a fun podcast. Sometimes we go serious, heavy duty, nuts and bolts. Sometimes we do games, and you learn something from the games as well. But you guys, really appreciate it. Knock 'em dead. Be safe. Not too windy. Till then, we'll talk to you next time. Done.
It was like